So we're going to practice 2D shapes and turning them to 3D forms. Two-dimensional is a flat surface. Three-dimensional is a form or something that has 3 dimensions, multiple sides that you can walk around and see from different angles. What we're going to do today is we are going to take a square piece of paper. This is just an artist trading card, and I am going to trace out 2 squares. We're going to start with a practice drawing of what you have for some kind of sport or hobby. I want you to find a basic shape that you can relate to a sport or hobby of yours. And you are going to draw out a picture. So I'm going to start with 2 of these. This second one is going to be more of a final product. So step 1, we are going to draw a basic shape, and we're going to use that from a hobby or sport. So this is number 1, and this is number 2. This will be a practice that you will work on for about 5 to 10 minutes on your own. And then number 2 will be a kind of more step-by-step process with me so that you can develop more value and background in your drawings. So let's take about 5 to 10 minutes to do a drawing on number 1, and then we're going to enhance it on number 2. So I'm going to take a couple minutes to draw out. For me, I'm going to draw a soccer ball because I enjoy the sport. You choose your own thing. When I talk about basic shapes, I'm talking about anything that is square, rectangle, circular, triangular. It's up to you. So if you can think of a hobby or an activity that you do that are based off of these basic shapes, draw it out on here. You could do something that's like in a Rubik's Cube. You could do a traffic cone. I don't know, something related to a triangle. That's the first thing that popped in my mind. But I'm going to make a soccer ball. So that's what I'm going to be doing. And as you're working on this, I just want you to more or less focus on the shape and then give background details. Okay, now that I've finished my drawing, what we're going to do is we're going to bump it up from this stage to this stage. And I'm just going to talk about a couple of things that I notice when I see students drawing these kind of things. So number 1, the focal point right here is completely fine. that sounds good. It's a good balance. And then having a horizon line to kind of divide up where the sky and the earth meet is completely fine. And then coloring in the background. So some of the things about coloring is when I was coloring, you might have noticed I was coloring in this direction, vertically up and down. I was coloring in this direction diagonally and then sometimes horizontally. And then I was also finding the shape and coloring in the direction of the shape. So when we get to the coloring point, we're going to try and focus on going one direction. So either you're coloring all horizontally for the entire thing, or you're coloring all horizontally this way, vertically this way, or diagonally. It's up to how you want to do it. I am a diagonal colorer usually, but try and stick to one. There's this thing that I like to call fencing, which we draw around the shape first and then we color in towards it, but I'm going to show you in the next step. So going from step 1 to step 2, now what we need to do is turn these two-dimensional shapes, into three-dimensional forms. So instead of a square, we are going to use this edge of the square, looks like a 7, or you could use this edge of the square that looks like an L. It's up to you how you want to do it. And I'm going to just make it a little bit further away. I'm not fully completing it on either edges because I want to have a diagonal tilt or line to each one so that it turns into a box. You might have also seen it done this way where you make a little L next to it. You connect all of the angles. Or you might have seen it this way where you make a square, another square, and then you connect all of the edges. And then all you need to do is erase the inside lines so that you have your box. For a rectangle, it's the same thing, just making your square longer. For a triangle, depending on what kind of triangle you're doing, if it's more of a pyramid shape, it's going to have another angle line going towards the back, but not going the same distance as this first one, and having an angle up to that one. Or you might be doing a cone, which is going to have just a normal triangle look, but then it is going to have a curved bottom. For a circle, you're going to just have a circle. It's the shading that changes these shapes. So when you shade a circle or a cone, since they're more circular, you're going to follow the shape of the circle, getting from a dark line at the bottom, and then as you're going towards the middle, your C shape that I'm making is getting lighter and smaller as it gets towards the center. For your cone, you're going to have a straight line, really dark, and as it gets towards the middle, it's going to lighten up so that it looks like it has a shadow. So on this one, I'm going to do kind of the same drawing. If you started with a square or rectangle, please make that into a cube. Or if you're making a triangle into a prism, make that first. I'm going to do a circle, so I'm going to start with the basic shape again and draw the details. Like I said, if you're doing a rectangle or square, you're going to have to add those additional sides. And then you can make all your normal details in whatever you are making. Now for the background, I see a lot of drawings where the line is right underneath the ball, which means the earth just ends right here and the ball is kind of just sitting on the earth like this. When we look out into the distance, we see way more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the horizon line back in the distance a little bit more, so it just looks like we have more space to fill. And then for the sky, I'm not going to draw my clouds yet because I'm going to specifically do that when I'm coloring in. but I do know that I want to kind of change the shape of this net. So I'm just going to start with a small little square because I'm focused on background, which is everything is going to be a little bit tinier. The middle ground, everything is medium sized. And the foreground, everything is larger because it is closer to you. So if something is close to you, you'll see all the small details in your stuff. If something is far away from you, you won't see as many details. All right, so I'm just gonna do this base layer and I'm just gonna kind of press lightly and I'm gonna try my best to stay in the same direction. So this time I'm coloring horizontally back and forth. And I'm gonna try my best to work the paper so that I don't see any white marks, trying to fill in the space as best as possible. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of working around the ball, going the same direction. And then as I get to the ball, I am gonna kind of follow the shape just to kind of make a very light outline so that I don't color inside of my drawing. So already as I'm coloring this, I can tell a difference in craftsmanship because my coloring just looks a little bit more neatly laid out. After I go this direction, it looks good. I want to just kind of fill in some of the white spaces, so I'm going to go the opposite direction over the top of everything, all of this grass layer. If you are doing something that is like a basketball or a baseball, you might be working with brown to do dirt or like a basketball floor, a gym court. So you might want to be using colors that are brown, but we're going to enhance the brown color with other options, which I'll talk about in a minute. All right, so I just kind of filled it in a little bit better. Now what I'm going to do is, if you look at the color wheel, which I'm just going to draw here real quick. I'm going to look at the colors that are next to green on the color wheel. I know that yellow is going to help lighten the color green, and I know blue is going to help darken the color green. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to think about what spot in my drawing I want the sunlight to be coming from. So I'm going to imagine that there's a sun here pointing down on my work. So this right here is going to be the lightest spot. This half is going to be the lightest. And then this side is going to have a little bit more of a shadow tone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use blues to make kind of a darker green grass on this side. And I'm just lightly coloring it. Also, going into the distance, things will look a little bit darker. But also there's different tones of grass. So I could be using browns to add to this darkness. If I wanted to, I could also pull brown onto this side. If you are doing a basketball court or sand or something, you can use oranges. I'm gonna just do a little sample here. You can use orange tones to lighten up the brown. You can use yellow tones to lighten up the brown. And then you can use black or purples or blues to bring the darkness to the color brown. So that's another option for people who are using brown in their color. On this side of the paper, I'm going to use more of a yellow because that's the lighter version of green. And I'm just gonna kind of go over the top of it. So I'm gonna just kind of divide my paper. Yellow on this side, blue on this side. So this side can be more of a shadow, and this side can be more of the sunlight hitting it. So as I talked about with the background, less detail because it's far away. So if I looked into a field of grass, if I was standing close to the grass, I could see the blades of grass. Far away, I'd just see kind of more of a flat line of grass. So back here in the background, I'm gonna keep it pretty flat, but moving forward, I'm gonna make more pencil marks to make it look like blades of grass. So I'm going to just add extra lines into my work. And I'm going to do it in different directions, so it kind of gives it a little bit more life. Maybe go on to the ball a little bit. And I'm just, like I said, going different directions, making them a little bit softer back here in the distance, but pressing really hard, adding a lot of pressure here. And I'm going on both sides. So on that side that is blue and the side that is more yellow toned. The closer I get to the edge of the page, the harder I'm pressing. Some thick strokes here, some thin. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the blue for the shadow side and I'm going to add some light blue marks just to give it a little variety. Yellow on the opposite side. Maybe I'll throw a little green in, brown in here. So I'm not just scribbling, I'm making very specific marks, just making lines in different directions. And now I'm gonna do this soccer ball. So I'm going to add the color to the details, and then I'm going to start creating this into a form. Okay, so for a square, whatever side that you have the sunlight coming from, if it was this angle here, this would have the most light hitting it. This would have a medium amount of light hitting it, and this side would be darkest. And that is just using shadows to make it look more realistic. Same thing, if the light's coming from here, this is going to be the lightest. This is going to be the darkest because it's further away from the sun. And this will be pretty dark too, just a medium tone. Light side, dark side. So for my ball, when I was talking about this before, I kind of create a C shape because if I go straight across it, it's not going to look three-dimensional. It's not going to look circular. So I'm going to start at the edge of my soccer ball, only about half of the ball. I'm going to make a dark line, the darkest that I can. And then as I work my way up to the middle, I'm going to continue making these circular shapes and then stop halfway. So I'm going from a dark line, and as it gets closer to the center, it's going to lighten up. And I'm going to do that on the side and on the bottom. So already we're starting to see more of a three-dimensional shape. So this spot here is where the sunlight is hitting, so it should be the brightest point. So I'm not going to touch that at all. And like I said, I'm kind of working in this circular motion. If you're using a square or a pyramid, you'll be going straight across, straight lines. All right, now that I have a three-dimensional ball, I'm going to use black and blue to add a shadow underneath. So if this is a ball and the sun is hitting it, it's going to make kind of an oval shape underneath it. On flat ground, like a basketball court or sand, just a normal flat drawing would be fine. But since this is grass, the grass pieces are going to be the dark pieces. So I'm going to add some dark grass here by making those pencil marks a little bit more jagged. If I was doing a basketball, it would be a very flat line, but since this is grass, it's going to be a little bit more rough in the same shape. So closest to the ball is going to be the darkest marks. Going further away from it, I'm going to spread out my marks so that it gets lighter as it goes back into the distance. And of course, underneath it should be dark as well. I'm going to add some blues and purples to that. And then I'm going to go over the top of that with green. If you're doing it on a basketball court or sand, you're going to be using browns, blacks, purples, things like that. Okay, now that I have the field done, I'm going to work on the sky. So when I draw skies out, most times I see a lot of like poofy white clouds, a little cartoony. When I start doing my sky, what I'm going to focus on is I'm going to color with blue, because we start with blue skies, and then I'm just going to miss some spots. And from there, I can start to use those shapes as the clouds. And I'm just gonna give it a little bit of a darker line on the under edge of the cloud. But I also want to add a little color into my sky, maybe make kind of like a sunset happening. So I'm going to use other colors, like maybe some orange, maybe some pinks and purples. This is more or less to make this space a little bit more interesting. So I'm just kind of lightly blending a whole bunch of colors together. And then if I wanted to go back over the top with blue just to kind of finalize it, I could do that. If I wanted to make the clouds a little bit more sunset-like, I could go in with color on the bottom of them, maybe add a little marks in the actual clouds. And then the last thing that I'm going to add is details to create the soccer field and the net. So what I could do is I could use a black colored pencil to draw out my details back here, because this is in the distance. And I kind of just want to come up with an idea. But also I have a soccer field, so I should create more of a field than just a line. So I'm going to go across diagonally, and I'm going to just create a little penalty box here. And then the edge line of the field, maybe there's a little flag here and a corner kick area. And there we go, we have a finished little soccer ball drawing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this out and glue it onto an artist trading card so that I can use this as an artist trading card. You do not need to do that, but it's an option so that you have more artist trading cards to trade later. All right, I want to see the best drawings that you can, turning your 2D shape into a 3-dimensional form. Good luck!